If you see that orange and blue coaster perched on the hillside, you know where you are. At Six Flags, The Great Escape in Glens Falls, New York, right next to Lake George. So this is where you start your journey across a bridge over the highway, and then you walk down the ramp, and that brings you to the security gates that you queue up for. And just past the security gates is the actual entrance to the park. So, as we usually do, let's dissolve right in to the entrance midway. And here we are. So this is the first thing you see, and it's really charming. It's very attractively designed, very rustic, and notice the pavement. You got a lot of fake brick and cobblestone. What we're going to do is we're going to make a counterclockwise circuit of the park. And I'm doing this park again, not only because I love this park, but because there was a big addition in 2024 that I want to show you. So over here on the right, if we go down this little alleyway here, there's Sasquatch, which is the power shot tower. Over on the left, we just saw the station for the Swan Boat ride, which is a really unique and pleasant trip. There it is. And it just goes around a little man-made river that they have. And over here is Thunder Alley, which is a 1950s themed antique car ride. And it's all automatic, it's all electric, so they just push a button, you don't have to step on a pedal, so it's great for little kids. In fact, this whole park is great for little kids because it was designed for little kids. The Great Escape started back in 1949. This was the 75th anniversary of the park. Started by Charlie Wood, the legendary impresario, who created really the first theme park in the United States called Storytown, USA, themed to storybook characters like Mother Goose. As the park evolved to include more and more different types of attractions, for instance, Charlie Wood bought most of the unique rides that were at Freedomland USA, the short-lived park in New York, and incorporated those into Storytown. It started to veer a bit from his original theme, so the park was renamed The Great Escape. And he shepherded it until about 1997, when he sold The Great Escape to Premier Parks, which eventually bought Six Flags and then renamed this Six Flags The Great Escape. And you will recognize, like this coaster here, many of the hallmarks of a Six Flags park. The stock rides that Six Flags puts in. For instance, the Greased Lightning that you just saw on the left. That's a stock Larson giant loop that Six Flags has in almost all their parks. And the Boomerang coaster you see there is the same. Over here on the right is one of the still unique rides from the original park, the Storytown train. And it just takes you back along the river edge here and then around. It's a nice little relaxing ride. And there goes Greased Lightning. Capone's has really good pizza. The building over on the left used to house a really good ice cream shop, but that was closed when we were there. Now, if you go left, that will take you to the entrance of the park. We're going to keep along this route here. That little house, I can't remember what used to be in there, but it was one of the storybook characters in there, and there was a water wheel on the other side that used to spin. On the left here is a diving show, and that was closed when we were there. Now you have two ways to go from here. You could go straight, or you could take this bridge, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep hugging to the right here, and we'll get to Timbertown on the left on our way back. And the bridge is necessary to cross the river because really a large amount of the park is located on the other side of that river. Notice all the beautiful plantings. The park just looks gorgeous. Here comes the Storytown train. We'll let that roll by. I think they need to work on their whistle. All right, so let's continue across here. Now, the area we're entering at one point was themed to Octoberfest, which explains the look of the buildings. It doesn't really have that theme anymore. It's sort of a mishmash, although there are a couple of sort of German-themed things in this area. We're going to take a right here. And there's a little food concession, and just beyond it is the Sky Ride. It's an old Hopkins Sky Ride that takes you on a nice picturesque tour of the front area of the park, and it's very enjoyable. It was closed the day we were there. Now, there used to be a yo-yo ride up over here, sitting perched on a little hillside. That's gone now, and it's essentially just an empty area. It has a few cafe tables there. And there's nothing wrong with cafe tables overlooking the park. All right, so we'll continue on our way here. Blizzard is an indoor scrambler, and it's very popular. Under the premier Six Flags ownership, the park pretty much stayed the same. Of course, with Six Flags came the Looney Tunes characters, and so the storybook characters were replaced by the Looney Tunes characters, but they still kept the park as a family destination. They didn't try to turn it into a teen thrill park, which was a good thing, although they added some teen thrill rides to appeal to a wider demographic. But it basically kept its character, which I really appreciated. However, once Premier sold off Six Flags to first to Snyder, the football guy, and then to a series of investment firms, the park's character began to change a little bit. It became more of a thrill park and less of what I used to love about it, a unique family destination. One of my favorite coasters is in this park, and it suffered badly under the Six Flags management initially. It basically became very rough and almost unrideable, which was a real shame because of the care with which it was installed originally. But that is changing. The management now seems to be given more autonomy in the park to basically create the Great Escape as opposed to Six Flags. So when you come to the park, you'll notice in big letters it says Great Escape, and in very small letters it says Six Flags. So they're really playing up the uniqueness of the park, and I like that. There's a sky coaster, and down there is a big pavilion. If you have outings, you can have banquets and dances and things in there. And now we're circling around, and in front of us is the new ride in the park, but we're going to talk about that on the way back. We have to go buy it on the way back, and we'll deal with it in more detail then. But suffice it to say, it is a phenomenal addition to the park. I'm really glad they put it in. So we'll continue to the right here, and this is taking us up to the far sort of north end of the park. The park layout is sort of strange. It's a lot of little dead ends here and there. There's Hurricane Harbor, which is the big water park. Tradewinds is where you can get all your water park accessories. There's the usual Six Flags hanging shark that they have at most of their water parks. And we won't go into the water park, we'll go by it. And there's some nice little theming elements around here. They've really played up the fact that this is a theme park and not just an amusement park like Six Flags New England or Six Flags Great Adventure. Now, if you take a right, that's the water park. We're going to take a left. On the left of us is a go-kart track, which was open, but it didn't seem to have too many takers that day. And then there's also another water park. So the water park is basically split in half by this path. On the right is one section of the water park, and on the left is the big wave pool and more water slides. And they actually have even given this section a different name. It's called Splashaway Island. And that brings us to another bridge, taking us over a couple water slides that are there, into the very back end of the park, which has one of my favorite coasters of all time. The thing I love about this coaster is not only that it's a great ride when it's running well, but it has an incredible history behind it. The Comet was something Charlie Wood rescued from Crystal Beach in Ontario, Canada, when it closed. Crystal Beach had the Crystal Beach Cyclone, and that is a legendary coaster that's considered to be probably the most intense coaster ever built. Legend has it that they had a nurse on duty at the exit platform because people were getting off with broken collarbones and broken ribs. And it became a liability for the park, and it was a nightmare to maintain. So the park, this was in 1946 that they decided to redo the coaster, but it was at the end of World War II, and it was hard to get material. So they got my favorite designer, Herb Schmeck from the Philadelphia Toboggan Company, to come in and take all of the metal structure of the ride and, like a puzzle, rearrange it into a completely different coaster. And he created, Herb Schmeck did, just an incredible ride, probably one of his masterpieces. It's just an airtime machine the whole way. It's a big double out and back coaster. So it went from the Cyclone to the Comet. And when Crystal Beach closed, since it's basically a giant erector set, Charlie Wood bought it, dismantled it, and then with the help of the Western New York Coaster Club, reassembled the whole thing here, and it ran phenomenal for the first 5 years. When Premier took over, maintenance just wasn't the same as under the Charlie Wood era, but it was still an incredible ride, and the maintenance has been getting better. When we rode it on this trip, it was light years better than it was from our last trip. And that's the end of the Midway there. So we'll head back down toward the Octoberfest section that we just came from. This little mini frisbee ride was strange because it really didn't rotate that much. Normally they'll spin more, but that one was just sort of a swing back and forth. And of course, since this is a Six Flags park, there was lots of loud pop music playing, so I had to alter the audio so as not to alert the copyright police. There you get a good shot of the back end of the Comet and of the wave pool, which is really large. One of the things I really appreciate about The Great Escape is that the management appreciates their history. So when Six Flags came in and began retooling the park into its own image, and a lot of the original Storytown buildings and structures were removed, they weren't thrown away. Management kept them in storage and gradually began bringing them back. And it was really nice to see that. So instead of getting rid of stuff from the past, they preserved it and then found a way to incorporate them in new ways into the modern park. So not freezing the park in its past, but acknowledging its past and allowing the park to move on. And I really appreciated that. For instance, coming up here around the corner, the new coaster that we saw earlier, that took the place of the bobsleds, which was something that Premier Parks brought in. The bobsleds was an Intamin bobsled ride, and it was okay. It wasn't my favorite ride in the park, but rather than obliterate the memory of it, they've preserved it. This is the original entrance to the bobsled, and they just kept that there, and they kept one of the original cars there, so you have a photo op. You can sit in the thing and take a picture of yourself. However, this is the new king of the Midway. This is Bobcat, and it's a brand new wooden coaster built by the Gravity Group, and it is a terrific ride. Perfect for the demographic. So the Timberliner trains, which you see coming around the corner here, they are really nimble at these curves, and they have a marvelous restraint system that can accommodate nearly any size rider. From a little kid to a big guy, it can accommodate almost anyone. And they're very comfortable trains, and it's an airtime machine. It's just one little rabbit hop with lots of curves in between. I should say one little rabbit hop. It's one little rabbit hop after another with a lot of curves in between. Really good fit for the park, and they did a beautiful job theming it. I mean, they went above and beyond. Notice all the stonework around here. They didn't have to do that, but it really adds character to the ride. And not only that, they put in not one, but 2 waterfalls to go along with it. This is the actual entrance to the Bobcat, right near the first waterfall. And it's a really nicely themed queue line with a lot of wooden timbers. And over here is the second waterfall. Again, they didn't have to do this, but it looks gorgeous, and it really creates a wonderful atmosphere. The Bobcat trains also have a video camera on board pointing at you. So you can, if you choose, pick up a digital video of yourself riding the coaster. It's a nice idea. They do that on the coaster at Busch Gardens, Verbolten. You can do that there too. And there goes the train, which has this really nice sculpture of a bobcat coming out of the front. There's the new entrance to the Raging River, and again, they did a beautiful job theming that with the little bears climbing up the entrance. Now back here, Raging River is their rapids ride, and it's a really good one. Back here used to be a big Ferris wheel, which gave you panoramic views of the park, but that was removed to make way for the Bobcat. And here you can see some of the twisting track. And that's a dead end over there. That doesn't lead you anywhere, except there's a little overlook where you can watch the rapids ride go around its course. So that brings us to this dead end. We're going to head back toward the I'm back at Busch Gardens. We'll head back toward the Octoberfest section. That huge building in front of us is the Alpine Fest House, and they serve veggie burgers in there, among other foods. Normally at a Six Flags park, you're going to find hamburgers, hot dogs, chicken strips, and that's about it, and pizza. But they have a much wider variety of food here, and I like that as well. In front of us is funnel cake stand, so if you need your funnel cake fix, that's where to get it. I find it interesting that there are some Six Flags parks that have retained the Looney Tunes theming in sections, and there are some Six Flags parks that have dumped the Looney Tunes characters, and I'm not sure what that's all about, if it's a licensing per park or whether the chain just doesn't have an interest in it anymore. I don't know. But the Looney Tunes area in this park several years ago was abandoned in favor of their own characters, which I think are much more effective. They're unique and they're still kid-friendly. And so what happened is the Looney Tunes area turned into Timbertown, and they have, a moose and all sorts of little woodland animals in there that are fairly generic. And I like that they've kept that kid-focused area and kid-focused theme, and that they didn't have to do branding in order to do that. They came up with their own idea. And speaking of branding, over here is one of the original attractions still active from Charlie Wood's Storytown. That was Alice in Wonderland. You actually go down the rabbit hole, which gets smaller, and you pop out in a room with giant furniture, and you walk around through the story of Alice in Wonderland. And again, it's not going to win any awards, and it's not going to thrill maybe the modern kids, but it is really charming. For little kids especially, it's quite magical, and I'm glad they've kept it going. And also, unlike other Six Flags parks, Great Escape has wonderful merchandise. Normally, if you go to a Six Flags park, you're going to find just generic Six Flags branded stuff, nothing particular to the park you're in. But here, they have really nice Bobcat souvenirs, from magnets to a really nice t-shirt. They don't have drunken lions, but they have, hats and posters, really nice posters of the Comet and magnets and all sorts of tchotchkes. So if you want nice souvenirs of your time at Great Escape, you will have unique things that you can buy to take home. And that's another thing I really appreciate about this place. So here we go into Timbertown. And again, it's another little dead end. I wish they'd find a way to connect these places so you wouldn't have to go into an area and then come out, and then go into an area and come out. You could actually loop around from area to area. But it is really nicely themed. This used to be Taz's Tornado when it was a Looney Tunes thing, and you can still see some of that Looney Tunes look about it. And back here, there's a big water play area. That used to be a giant wooden elephant that Charlie Wood had gotten from some exposition somewhere. Here's one of the last remaining storybook houses, and each one would tell a different little story. And in here, it looks like it's been smashed to pieces, like vandals hit it. I don't know what's going on here. I think this used to be Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I can't remember. And they used to have a little church back here and all sorts of little... And the buildings are neat because adults generally can't fit into the buildings. It's only for little kids, so it makes them feel special. There's a nice kiddie roller coaster and a nice little kiddie train ride. And over here, we're coming up on two abandoned attractions. The one here on the right used to be an animal show that they would have daily, and that was always popular, but it's basically just fenced off. They have benches, but the stage is fenced off. And over here was one of my favorite attractions in the park, and it is not coming back. That was Jungle Land. You like my jungle? And you would walk through and see these animatronic hippopotamuses and crocodiles and lions and elephants, and walk across a swinging bridge. It was really fun, and kids really liked it, but it doesn't look like the park has any intention of bringing it back. It's all overgrown now. Nature has completely reclaimed it. It's basically a giant swamp now. But it was one of my favorite attractions. And up on the right, that was another eatery, which was closed when we were there. And we did get veggie burgers at that place the last time we were at the park. So I don't know what they have now because it wasn't open. So we're coming out of Timbertown, and if you head straight from here, that's going to take you back into the 1950s section that we started the video with. Instead, we're going to take a right and head up to two more areas that are in the park. And this building over here on the right used to be the old schoolhouse, and it had a bell inside that you could ring, and kids loved ringing it. And now it's just a ranger station, which is appropriate given the new theming in the area. The high dive show on the right It's normally very, very popular. They would always fill the seats for that. And it was the typical, comic show with basically clowns who happened to be divers. Notice the sky ride up above. That wasn't running when we were there. And that's a shame because that is a really nice ride. So here's the place that I told you had ice cream that no longer has ice cream. It does still have an indoor sit-down area, so it's one of the few places in the park where you can actually eat sitting down. So if you wanted to eat your cotton candy in there, I guess you could do that. There's also, you could go from the Capone's Pizza and eat it there. There's the dive show. It looks like they were intending to run it, but it looks a little overgrown in there. I'm not sure. Now there are some of the relocated buildings from Storytown, and they're in really nice shape. They renovated them, and little kids can go into them. There's a sign that says you have to be shorter than 54 inches. Here's the Grand Carousel, which is a fiberglass model, but it's very nice. This little stand serves funnel cakes, but they also have some of the only ice cream in the park. And Karen and I were sort of gobsmacked because the small ice cream cone there costs $10. I can get 2 gallons of ice cream for that price. Over here on the left is Cinderella's Castle. Now you see the pumpkin coach, and there are characters waving there, which is nice. But you used to be able to ride in the coach all the way around the castle, and little girls absolutely loved doing that. You get to sit with Cinderella and chat with her. And they don't do that anymore. They put picnic tables and little cafe tables in that area instead, which is a good use of it, but one less little thing for little kids to do. And here are some more houses. This one was being repainted, but these are more of the storybook character houses, and we'll see a few more in a little bit. Now we're coming up on the last area of the park, which is Ghost Town. And as you can imagine, and there's Winky the Whale, which has been there for forever. There used to be a little figure of Jonah inside for the biblical story of Jonah and the whale. So, Ghost Town is a really nicely themed Western area, and it was much different under Charlie Wood. As you might expect, it didn't have this gigantic steel coaster. This was a used coaster. And this is another way to get to Ghost Town, which to me is a much more magical way to do it. You go through that cave and then suddenly emerge in a whole different area. But we'll see the cave later. So up here, and you have a little fun graveyard over here too with silly phrases on the tombstones on Boot Hill. But the big coaster, which is called Canyon Blaster, was moved from another park, and it is one of the shortest aero mine train coasters I've ever been on. You basically go up a short lift hill, you do a helix, then you go up another lift hill, do a helix, and you're back to the station. I think the entire ride is about 30 seconds. But again, good family ride because it's not too extreme. And little kids, for a first coaster, it makes a good coaster for little kids. Now you can see the sign on that building, Windy Bill's Western World. Windy Bill was a cowboy performer who was at Great Escape for decades, and he had a really popular cowboy show that he would do out on the Midway here. And so he's not around anymore, long gone, but they kept a little memory of him. This is a big bumper car arena. And over on the right is the entrance to Canyon Blaster. And in front of us now is nothing. That giant, ugly metal building that you see was originally, in the premiere days, an indoor roller coaster called Nightmare at Crack-Axle Canyon. And they got rid of the coaster and left the building, and now it's used only during Halloween as a sort of fun house. And it's a shame because it had a beautiful natural mountain that was in there, and the park literally moved a mountain to put that building there. But this is a great flume ride. This is Desperado Plunge, and it is a really long flume with some surprising drops in it. You don't get very wet, but it's a lot of fun, and I'm really glad they still have it. You're now looking at the Red Garter Corral, which also hides the entrance to Steamin' Demon, the big looping coaster we saw at the beginning. And the Red Garter Corral has shows, like country western shows, and it's right next to the Red Garter Saloon, which used to have shows in it. So I'm not sure why they built another one but kept the original, but there you are. And there's a nice little firehouse that used to have an ancient fire engine in it, you know, an old horse-pulled fire engine. And then over here we have the Condor, which still runs as far as I know. It just wasn't running the day we were there. And an additional spin and barf ride. I mean, that one is pretty tall, but take a look at this one. This is called Adirondack Outlaw, and look at that. And you spin really fast on that and flip upside down. So if you want to lose your lunch, that's a really good place to do it. So now let's head out of the ghost town area, and we're going to go through the tunnel. I remember the first time I came to the park and walked through this tunnel. It was like I was a little kid all over again. It felt almost like I was going through a fun house, but it felt really magical. And that's not a feeling I get as an adult very often at a park. And there's really, I mean, there's nothing else in this tunnel. It's just a way to get from one place to another. But it's a really nice themed way to do it. And I love around the corner here, we have the waterfall, and you can look out at the waterfall cascading down in front of you. And that gives you a clue as to where we're headed next. Around the corner here, and notice the little general store. Again, all these little buildings made just for kids. And many of them still have their really charming theming inside them. All right, and now we'll head up this hill to the Old Woman in a Shoe. Now this originally was a slide, so you could climb inside the shoe and then slide down on the outside. They removed the slide, and for a long time it was just a decoration. But now they actually have Mother Goose stories here. So Mother Goose comes out, and you can sit with Mother Goose and have her tell stories, and I think that's a really nice touch. And I love these little heart pieces that are on the top of the stone fence here. And there's the sky ride, and then this path brings us back toward the entrance. So you've probably gotten the idea that I really don't need to hype this park very much. I love this place. It started to fall out of favor with me when Six Flags began to turn it into something it really wasn't supposed to be. But the current management seems really focused on keeping it what it always was, a wonderful family park that's aimed at young children. And there's a charm here that I just don't find at many other parks. There goes one of the swan boats down there. And yeah, there are some concessions to Six Flags, like we have Coaster Candy, that's in every Six Flags park, and you have the Giant Loop, that's in every single park. But at the same time, they've kept a lot of what made Great Escape really special. So, if you are ever in the Lake George region of New York, you have to come by Great Escape. And it's a no-brainer if you have a season pass because entry is free. Even though the park is always paying homage to its past, it also has many new things to do, and every year it seems to just keep getting better. It's a wonderful legacy that Charlie Wood has left to the community. And if you come here, you won't be bored. See what I did there?